In this video, I'm going to be modeling for you the strategies that we use for rounding. So to get us all on the same understanding, rounding is when you estimate numbers so they are easier to use, easier to work with, easier when you're adding or subtracting or counting on or things like that. Rounding is actually a huge life skill. You're constantly, as adults, instead of saying that you're going somewhere at 2:47, you might say at about 3 o'clock. Or when you're at the grocery store and you're mentally thinking that this item that is $2.49, you're rounding it to $2.50 and kind of mentally breaking that down and thinking, okay, I'm going to spend about $11 or about $10. So this is actually something that we do all the time in life. Now, the strategy that we're going to use at first, you might think, well, that's not how I do that in life, but it actually is. It's what you naturally do. You just don't realize it. So I'm going to walk you through the steps that we take, point out some of the tricky parts that are sometimes confusing or a stumbling block, but I'm going to be showing you how to round this number in 5 different ways. So here, these are the steps that I model for the students and that I take, and it's when I zoom in on the place value where I'm rounding, I find the benchmarks, the midpoint, I compare my number to the midpoint, and then I round. Here I have some reminders of the midpoints, and I'll keep referring back to this. This tends to be probably the trickiest part for 4th graders when they're rounding. Determining the benchmarks and the midpoint are the trickiest parts, but these are either where you're rounding to and why you're rounding that way. So these are the parts that need a lot of practice and reminders. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Here I have 265,473. And I'm going to start by rounding it to the nearest 10. Now, your 4th grader rounded to the nearest 10 in 3rd grade, but we're now just doing it with more digits. Okay, so here I'm going to zoom in on the place value in the tens place. Okay, so here we are. I zoomed in. Now I'm going to make my benchmarks. So the benchmarks are where I could be rounding to, the 10 that it's in or the next 10. So what I like to do is I like to say, okay, in 3rd grade, I would have said, oh, 473. I would have thought that the first benchmark is the 10 it's already in, so that's 470. But now I'm just going to do it with 265,470. So that's my first benchmark, 265,470. That's the 10 that I'm in. And now I'm just going to do the next 10. So if I was counting by tens, it would be, 50, 60, 70, 80. So I'm not going to let these extra digits worry me. I'm just going to apply it with 265,480. All right, now I need my midpoint. So the midpoint here is what's in between a jump of 10. This is a distance of 10. Well, half of 10 is 5. So there's my reminder here. When I'm rounding to the nearest 10, my midpoint is 5 in between. That means it's 5 more than this one and 5 less than this one. So my midpoint is 265,475. All right. Now I'm going to compare my number. Okay, they have equal, 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 equal. Oh, equal again. The ones it places where they're not equal. This has less ones. That means it's a lesser number. Then that means I would round down. So the closest 10 is 265,470. And if I think about it, it's only 3 away, whereas here it's 7 away. So that makes sense. All right, let me now round to the nearest 100. So I'm going to zoom in on that hundreds place. And we rounded to the nearest 100 in 3rd grade. So it just looked like this, 473. Well, now I just have some extra digits in the front, but I'm not going to let that worry me. So in 3rd grade, I would have said, well, it's in the 400s. So my first benchmark would be 400. Well, here it's just 265,400. 265,400. So if I was doing it like a 3rd grader, it would be 400, 500. So now it's just going to be 265,500. Now my midpoint, since this is a distance of 100, right in the middle is 50. If I was doing it like a 3rd grader, it would be 450. So as a 4th grader, it's going to be 265,450. And then I'm going to compare the thousands period is exactly the same. The hundreds are the same. Now my tens are different. This has more tens, so it's a greater number, which means I would round up. All right, now I'm going to round to the nearest thousand, and we did this in third grade also. So here, I'm going to make my number line, and I'm going to look here. Well, it's in the 5,000s place, so I'm not going to let these extra digits bother me. It's just going to be 265,000. And then it would go from 5,000 to 6,000, so this is going to be 266,000. All right, now my thousands benchmark is 500 because it's going to be 500 from here and 500 here gives me 1,000. So a third grader would say 5,500. So it's just going to be 265,500. And when I compare, my thousands period is the same. It's my hundreds that are different. It has less hundreds, 4 here, 5 here. So I'm going to round down. Okay. All right, my 10,000s. So this is where fourth graders, they're not comfortable yet with the 10,000s and the 100,000s place because we don't use it a lot yet. So, but I can do it. I'm not going to let it worry me. So 265,473. Well, I'm in the 60,000s right now. So I'm going to start with the 260,000. And it's just like counting by tens. It's like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. So it's just 270,000. So I really like to use what I already know with smaller numbers, and I apply it to my greater numbers. All right, now if I had a distance of 10, it's very similar. It's just 5,000 is my midpoint. So it's instead of like 260, 270, in the middle would be 265. So I'm going to use that for my midpoint, 265,000, because 5,000 this way and 5,000 this way gives me a jump of 10,000. All right, now when I look, the 100,000s are the same. The 10,000s are the same. The thousands are the same, and this has more hundreds and tens and ones. So it would be like about right here on the number line. So I would round up. All right, so now I'm going to do my 100,000. All right, so let me draw my little number line down here. Let me erase this a little bit so I have a little extra room. All right, so my 100,000s place, well, it's just like a 3-digit hundreds, but now it's just with more digits at the end. So if I was doing it like a third grader, I would be in the 200s. Well, now I'm just going to be in the 200,000s. So I'm going to put 200,000 here. And then if I was doing this like a third grader, it would be 200, 300. Well, it's just going to be 300,000. All right. So my midpoint for 100,000s is 50,000 in the middle. So I'm going to add 50,000 here, or it would be 50,000 less here. So 250,000. Sorry, that's a little hard to read way down there. But 250, I'll erase that for us. 250,000. All right, so my number here is greater than 250,000. It has same amount of 100,000s, but it has more 10,000s. So I'm going to put it about right there somewhere. So it would round to the nearest 300,000. All right, so these are some examples. And what's very interesting about this is you'll notice the same number can get rounded down or it can get rounded up. And it depends on what place value you're looking at. So what I really suggest is just really becoming comfortable with how to find benchmarks and then remembering the midpoint. And if you notice, the midpoint has a pattern of 10 times more each time, because that's kind of how our place value system works. One other thing I want to show you that can be tricky sometimes is an example like this. So for this example here, I want to round to the nearest 100,000, okay? So I'm going to make my number line, and the 100,000 I'm in is the 900,000s. And then this is the tricky part. The next benchmark is the 10,000,000s. Well, remember, when we make new groups of 10, it goes into a new place value. Here, it's now the next group of 100,000 is a million. So then my midpoint would be 950,000. And my number has less in this place value, so it would be somewhere around here, so I would round down. So this can be tricky sometimes when you're needing the next benchmark and it's a 9. Think about the next place value. You wouldn't say 10 hundred thousands. You would say 1 million. Another example here is if I was rounding to the nearest 100. Well, the 100 I'm is the 900, so I'm just going to say it's the 41,900. Now my next one is 10 hundreds. When you make a new group of 10, that means you make a new larger place value. So it's actually 42,000 is the next one. So my number, my midpoint is 41,950. And then my number is a little bit lesser, so it would round down. Okay? All right, so those are some examples for you. But as a reminder, these are kind of the steps that we take. You do this naturally in your head, but this is kind of showing them. You think about the place value where you are. You use those benchmarks that match the place value. Then these are the midpoints that put us in the middle of those benchmarks. Compare your number to the midpoint and then round, whichever way kind of follows that pattern. Is it less than the midpoint, or is it equal to and more than the midpoint? And I forgot to say that. If it's equal to the midpoint, you round up. I forgot to put that here, and we didn't have any examples of that in this one, but that's important. If it's equal to the midpoint, you round up. All right, so keep practicing.